But I'll be honest with you, I never have wrestled as hard as I could wrestle, ever. So I don't even know what I'm actually capable of. I think it was like the very next day, I texted the Graysons. I said, out of everyone I met yesterday, I said, you guys are the ones in my mind today. And they just seem to check all the boxes. It's a tribute band, but it has original music.
The Backseat Boyz were originally supposed to be 4 members.
It was like a figment of Donnie's imagination. Hey, you two will be great. The man who ended up going by the wife beater. And then the other one was a guy named Flex Wheeler. And Donnie was thinking of the 4 of us. Well, we were already in CZW. We were already kind of the top tag team everywhere. Gave us like their belts when we were CZW talent. I remember me and Trent looking at each other like, what if as soon as you hit the top, we're already going right down forward. He beat Trent for the first ever PW heavyweight title, and he beat me for the first ever SPO heavyweight title. We had no choice, and he was just like, yeah, I'll do the best I can, man. And he went out there and killed it. Never say never.
Ladies and gentlemen, hosted by Coach C, Chris Sanders, this is Best for Business.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Another episode of Best for Business. I'm absolutely pumped for this one. I wanted this guy to be episode 2, and now Johnny Kashmere, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited, dude.
Yeah.
A lot of people have told me that I remind them of number 2, so it works out perfect.
Okay. It's crazy. Like, I remember, so originally how it started was I watched the Graysons wrestle when I was in like 5th, 6th grade. So then later on, when I got to commentate a match for theirs, I got introduced to you. And like Trigger the OG and Danny Miles say I'm a mark for you all of a sudden. But it's been such a fun ride. I've gotten to see your journey, and I'm happy to do this, man.
I could say the same to you, watching you evolve and grow and improve and get more confident and, become an even more eloquent talker than you were this time a couple years ago, bro. True. They say true nobility is not being better than anyone else. It's just being better than you used to be. And in that case, brother, you're doing good. Keep it up.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I remember I was talking to one of the other commentators, and we've been doing a lot of shows lately, and they keep saying it. Like, their favorite match I'll ever commentate is that 6-way you did at Live Pro. I don't know if I did like more research than ever, but I was so pumped to meet you. And then I don't even know if I told you this. I remember during the show, like right before, I think it was JP, took me to the back. We got commentary notes, and a few of the wrestlers like pulled me aside because you guys were talking to me about like college and how to balance it all. And they were like mind blown how you talked to me and like all that stuff. So thank you for everything over these years, man.
Of course, bro, man. That's how it is. You know how many people, do you know, it seems like yesterday that I was standing in your shoes.
Wow.
And people were doing that for me in the business. People like Donnie B and his brother Nova.
Damn.
People like John Zandig, like Todd Gordon, like Gary Wolf. There's so many of them that have done so much for me. So me paying it forward is really me paying it back. So
yeah.
But yeah,
when I was watching the SPOCast, I thought we were gonna get like moment of the year. I was waiting for like Raleigh Allen to make an appearance. That appearance he did for the funeral of Bucci was like one of the best things ever.
You know what? You're right. We got to get him back.
Yeah. So let's talk about you. So one thing you always talk about is being part of tag team wrestling and the passion you have for it. How did that passion ignite for you?
I always loved tag teams as a kid, like in the 80s, you had, the Killer Bees and the British Bulldogs and the Hart Foundation and Strike Force and even the Twin Towers and the Natural Disasters and Money Incorporated and the Rockers. I mean, the list just goes on and on. The Bushwhackers and each one, the Nasty Boys, each one added something. I like to say that being a wrestler in a wrestling organization is like being one out of a 64 box of Crayola crayons. And each color's got to be different, or why are you there?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And in the tag world, it just seemed to me like that box of crayons was the most colorful and fun, and I always gravitated towards it. So it just seemed natural that I would get trained by the Pitbulls, and I would go directly into a tag team after training.
So to go with that, when you listed all those teams, was there a team that like really resonated you growing up? Did you have a tag team you really like? I don't want to say shape yourself after, but like even early on that like made you love tag team wrestling?
I actually really liked Furnace and LaFon. Their Japanese stuff is Crawford and Furnace just blew me away. And when they showed up in ECW and then in WWE, I want to say they debuted on the exact same night, maybe even in the same match that The Rock debuted as
Wow.
Rocky IV. I think he was on their team, but they had their tag team cohesion was so spot on that I studied it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of the, I'm going to say the inspiration for things like our move, the dream sequence and stuff came directly from Furness and LaFont.
So to go with that, when we talk about tag team wrestling, from when you started watching it now, how has tag team wrestling evolved, do you think?
I don't think it's evolved much, unfortunately. How do you evolve it?
That's true.
There's so many moving pieces.
Yeah.
So what I think it's been is a launching pad. If you look at the top singles wrestlers of all time, a staggering number of them were in tag teams. I think that is right now the best thing tag teams could offer until we get a tag team that's as over as a singles wrestler that can main event WrestleMania. Like maybe we could make the argument that the Legion of Doom was that over.
Right. Yeah.
Road Warriors. Until we get a tag team that can main event WrestleMania, I don't think the tag division is going to change that much more. I mean, we have guys like the Usos who are awesome. And my God, they're phenomenal. They're so smooth in the ring. It's amazing to watch them. But tag team wrestling itself being moved forward as an art form does not seem like something that the WWE is worried about right now, nor should they necessarily be.
Yeah. So to go with that, when you mentioned earlier the Pitbulls, what would you say throughout your career have been like some of the biggest lessons you learned from them?
They told me, Johnny, you have to have a willingness to humiliate yourself every night before you can come into the wrestling business. Do you have that willingness? Will you humiliate yourself on a nightly basis? I said, yeah, I will.
Yeah.
So they taught me that. They also taught me what it means, how to have respect in the business, the old school way. They taught me how to not get heat. And they instilled certain things in me, like etiquette and things like that other schools might not necessarily teach you, especially back then when I went to school in the 90s. So, learning from them and having two perspectives. A lot of people have one trainer. And we're back to the Crayola crayon thing. That's one color. So I had two colors. I was lucky.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been always wanted to ask you, so I know parts of it. So I forgot what year it was. Donnie B invites you to a wrestling show and you attend, but when did you decide you want to get involved in wrestling again?
Oh, you're talking this second.
Yeah, this return, yeah.
That night when I went to Donnie B's event that was supposed to be for Trent, and I met the Graysons, and I got to see people like Chris Chetty and the SAT, Danny Moff. I got to meet the rep and work with the rep for the first time. And to see Donnie and everyone there that I hadn't seen in so long. Gary was there. It was a wonderful time. And I think it was like the very next day I texted the Graysons and I said, out of everyone I met yesterday, and I must have talked to 100 people, I said, you guys are the ones in my mind today, because I could feel and see the passion burning for wrestling in general and for tag team wrestling in specific in their eyes and in the way they approached me and in the way we bonded in such a short period of time. So I knew immediately, like, that they were special. I knew immediately.
What was it that stuck out, you'd say?
Well, Tommy Grayson asked me to take a tag picture with all the tag teams that were in the back.
Yeah.
So that made me realize, like, whoa, and then I just watched how they acted, and I asked around about them, and I started to find out a little bit more about their history, and are they good people, are they reliable, are they whatever, and they just seemed to check all the boxes, and it just seemed like natural.
Yeah.
And they have a passion for the Backseat Boyz. The Backseat Boyz is their tag team name now. They're not known as the Amazing Graysons anymore. They're known as the Backseat Boyz. So, I'm a tag team wrestler.
Yeah.
But I'm a singles wrestler out of necessity right now. I don't have my tag partner passed, so I'm technically a singles wrestler who is a tag wrestler.
Yeah.
Who's in a 3-man group with a tag team, but the Backseat Boyz is really their tag name.
Yeah.
So even though I'll always be a Backseat Boy, Backseat for life and all that, and I'm proud to say I'll always be a Backseat Boy, they are the Backseat Boyz. That's canon. You get it?
Yeah. So to go with that, I'm curious how fast did it go from having that conversation to making them the new Grace no the new Backseat at the time? Because I remember shortly before that they posted this video. I think Jay George edited it. It was like almost 10 minutes long, explaining going from the Amazing Graysons to the New Graysons, and then they go to the new Backseat. So how long was that transition?
Not much of a transition. It's funny when wrestlers get their next assignment, so to
Mhm.
speak. It's almost like a download from the universe.
Yeah.
It's almost like when your phone says you have an update. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? And I think they misread their download,
Okay.
and they thought, I don't want to sit on my ass.
Yeah.
Just let it come to me, and they got proactive. And they interpreted the download that they got and did the best they could with it, but they didn't know that I was about to enter into their orbit, and we were going to create something new together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because what we did was created something larger than the sum of our parts. And when you create energy out of nothing like that, I feel like you have longevity. It can't be taken away from you because it didn't come easy in the first place.
And then to go with that, another guy you mentioned was Donnie B. Now, when I listen to the SPOCast, like he's one of my favorite people to hear. I remember when you first went, you started on Instagram Live. I think it was like one of the first shows when you were talking about SPO wrestling. He gave you the talk on why not to call it the SPO World Title or something like that. So
Yeah.
like all these lessons, like every week when he has his 15 minutes of fame and gives like all these lessons throughout the years, what are some of the biggest lessons you learned personally from him? Because you got to be on the road with him and have a lot of interactions with him.
Well, old school wrestling promoting didn't have social media to rely on. A lot of new school pro wrestling promoters are solely social media based. Oh, we have a new match graphic. We're going to put it out on social media. And then they, um, wash their hands of the situation, walk away and say, if we draw, great. If we don't draw a crowd, oh, well. Well, promoters have a little bit of a higher calling than that, in my
Yeah.
opinion. And we need to get out there and pound the pavement. And like Donnie said, actually have conversations with actual people in
Yeah.
actual real life. And if I'm not going to do that around the city of Chester, then I can't expect to have a great number of people at Harris Casino come February 8th or April 26th or whatever date we're talking about. And that's on me, and
Mhm.
so many wrestling promoters I see in locker rooms like yell at the wrestlers, like, yo, share this
Yeah.
stuff on social media. And man, they're right. A lot of wrestlers are the shits at
Yeah.
sharing stuff on social media. But in the end, it is the promoter's job to get people in that building using things like the wrestlers on the event
Mhm.
as tools,
Yeah.
as that's what you're paying them for, so you can promote them.
Yeah. So to go with that too, another thing I'm curious, one of the interviews you did, I think it was with Slam Society, you talked about, I think the Backseat Boys were originally supposed to be four members, I think you were talking about, or something along. Do you remember who those four members were supposed to be or no?
Of course,
Okay.
yeah.
Who are they supposed
It
to
was a
be?
figment of all right. It was like a figment of Donnie's imagination, though. It
Okay.
only existed in his mind.
Yeah.
He met us. It was okay. You two would be great. Blah blah blah. Let's start it, and then we'll add the other two. His ideas for the other two was the man who ended up going by the wife beater.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You talk
Uh,
about him a lot.
yeah, he used to be called Matt. Well, his name's Matt,
Hmm.
but he was in my same class with the Pitbulls,
Nice.
so he was already training with me and Trent and our whole clique. So we were going to have him because he had not started the wife beater gimmick yet.
Yeah.
So we were going to ask him to be one. And then the other one was a guy named Flex Wheeler,
Okay.
African American wrestler. He was already a little older. I want to say he may have already been pushing 35, 40 at the time,
Wow. Yeah.
but he was in good shape and he had like a boy band look. So Donnie was thinking of the four of us. After me and Trent did our first thing together, our
Hmm.
first tag match or whatever, when we came in the back, Donnie was like, it's locked. It's a
Wow.
2-minute move.
Wow. So we talk about the Graysons. So ever since you reached out to them and told them that you saw something in them, what have been the transformation you've seen of them too, specifically, since aligning yourselves with them?
I don't want to take credit because it's not like, how do I explain it? When you train someone to think differently in wrestling, I think of it like if I was to come next to you outside at night and say, look at that star up there. You would say, well, which star?
Yeah.
I'd have to get right next to you and point and say, that one. Do you
Yeah.
see it? And you'd say, yeah, I see it.
Mhm.
Now, if you look away, you're going to need me there to find that star again, aren't you?
Yeah.
Well, the Graysons, they don't need me there to find their star anymore.
Wow.
That's the best way to put it.
So
Graysons are shoulder to shoulder with me now. Graysons are ride or die brothers that I trust with my life now. And I love them like I love Trent, like I love Donnie. They're part of me. They're part of who the Backseat Boys became. And this is my life's work, the Backseat Boys. So I don't take this stuff lightly. You know, I always say the wrestling game, it's a game you can't afford to lose, but it's a game you have to play like you have nothing to lose.
Right.
Wrap your mind around that.
Yeah. So another thing that I like I said, I'm a mark for you. I listen to the SPOCast all the time. You talked about originally a few weeks ago how at first you were starting off with the Nü Backseatz, but then eventually you had that talk with Donnie B to officially make them the Backseat Boys. So how long did you wait until you had that conversation and think that they were ready to do that?
So we started about a year. They did about a year as the Nü Backseatz. And that was because I started thinking to myself, there might be people out there, especially in the wrestling business, who do remember and maybe have a certain love for the Backseat Boys, who might look at it like it's blasphemy that I'm allowing anyone else to do anything with the Backseat Boys name, blah, blah, blah. I wanted to preemptively address all those people and say it's similar, but it's not identical. It's a tribute band, but it has original music.
Nice. Yeah.
And that was a way to sort of get them in the door. And once they went out there and showed the world match by match by match what I already knew and already saw in them, it wasn't long that it's like in Mortal Kombat when you're in a fight, your energy meter, dude, their energy meter just went up and up and up and up and up. And that's what happened.
So something else that I think I'm curious. So I see on social media you're a big Batman guy, and I know when I used to first watch the Graysons, they were huge Batman fans. When did you find out you had that similar connection?
Yeah, that was weird. That I didn't realize until later, like that they were Graysons, and you know I do the whole Batman thing, and Burt Ward knighted me and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I say we have a bit on SPOCast where we call it "You're going the right way."
Yeah.
Where you know a sign on the side of the road just says, "Dude, you're going the right way," and I call that coincidence. So the coincidence of me already seeing something in them already seeing something in me too. Like I came back originally as their manager, and they were like, "Yo, get in the ring, see what you can do." And before I knew it, I was like, "Okay, I'm back as a wrestler."
Yeah.
They are directly responsible for that.
Wow. So to go with that, you mentioned it, the Backseat Boys, it's a tag team, but with you in it. But in fact, in going so far with being with the Backseat Boys, has there been a favorite match you've seen of them or even with you, like the trios or even a tag team just being at ringside a part of?
Oh, yeah. They've had some amazing matches with some great teams. I love their matches against teams like, what's it called? CXR, the guys, oh, God, I can't think of their names. Marino and Philly.
Yeah, I know PME, you're talking about.
PME, yeah. I love their matches with PME. They had a great match with the SAT. They work well with anyone they're in there with. The Bang Brothers, they have really good matches with. And I know I'm forgetting tons of tag teams right now that they've had sick matches with. The Rep,
yeah.
God. You know, I like Primal Fear. I'm a big mark for them. Live Danger.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
are they back yet or still at the dojo?
They're still at the dojo.
Nice.
They're home for the holiday and did a couple events on Long Island and stuff, but they're going back to the dojo. Yeah, they're doing this. I couldn't be prouder of them too, man. The future of tag team wrestling is in good hands. Thank God.
So to talk with tag team wrestling, we talk about you and Trent Acid. Is there one match in your career that you would like point anyone to that sticks out for the Backseat Boys?
You know, I just watched a match on from Ring of Honor. It's on YouTube, and it's us versus Dunn and Marcos, the Ring Crew Express. Loved it. Us in CZW versus M-Dog 20 and Josh Prohibition. That was a really good match. Me and Trent versus Rick Blade and Nick Mondo. Any way you slice it, singles, tag, ladder match, not a ladder match, cage match, whatever. It's awesome. Always good. So you know, I would say that.
So, and to go with that, one of my favorite things to talk to you about is Ring of Honor. So how did the experience first start?
Ring of Honor?
Yeah.
Well, we were already in CZW. We were already kind of the top tag team everywhere. And I'm not bragging when I say that. That's just who we were. You know, that's how it was in Philly. We were the top tag team in Philly and in the area. So when they started running, it was natural they would want to use us, but we were in CZW. So they kind of had to go through CZW, make sure it was okay. And we were like the only people from CZW in the beginning that were doing both, you know, and they gave us like their belts. When we were CZW talent, we won the Ring of Honor titles from Homicide and Steve Corino, I believe, in one of our first matches there.
Yeah, that was going to be my next thing. Walk me through that, getting that pin. How does that feel? I believe it was September 20, 2003.
No one knew what Ring of Honor was going to become then. So it was just another independent wrestling fed to me. It was run by guys I already knew. It wasn't something I was marking out for, like, oh my God, I get to work for Ring of Honor. This is where I got to do my best stuff. It was just another place to wrestle. We were wrestling, 8 times a month, easy back then. And it was just another night at Ring of Honor. Yeah, I turned it up a little bit. Yeah. But I'll be honest with you, I never have wrestled as hard as I could wrestle ever. So I don't even know what I'm actually capable of, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Is something holding you back?
Yeah, I have trouble with my wind. I think that's what it is. I prefer hardcore wrestling. To be honest with you, if I had my way, I'd be a deathmatch wrestler. I know that sounds crazy, but I enjoy it. I love it, and I get excited to do death matches.
So throughout your career, when we talk about death matches, do you have like a wildest match or story competing in matches like that?
I mean, in Uneffin' Believable was a match we did. I got pushed off the top rope by Mondo, and I like dove over the ring post, and there was like a guitar in the ring post and some light tubes. So I kind of smashed through it, if you can picture that, going head first. But what I didn't realize was, how am I going to land? So I actually landed fingers first on the floor of the firehouse, and the bones in my fingers kind of pushed through to my skin, the edge of my skin. So like I could feel it for the next like 2.5 days until it healed. Every time I used my fingers, I could feel my bones moving in the meat of my hands. It was gross.
And that's your favorite kind of wrestling? Or one of your favorite things to do?
Yeah, right. Yeah, let's do it again. Sure. Yeah. Bring it on.
So you mentioned it before Ring of Honor at CZW. So do you have a match from CZW, whether it was singles or tags, that really stands out to you?
Well, I always loved wrestling Lobo. I always loved wrestling Mondo. I always loved wrestling Trent. I loved Blade. Loved wrestling with Rick Blade. Loved doing anything with Chris Cash and GQ.
Yeah.
Ian Knox, Messiah, Justice Payne. I loved working with them. Nick Gage, Nate Hatred. I used to love working with all those guys. Zandig. We had so much fun in there.
To go with that, I know like something with Johnny Kashmere, like I don't know where you like I don't know where you'll just post these match clips from like the past, whether it's CZW or Ring of Honor. So can you explain to me, because I see the clips, but I don't think they do them justice. What was like the atmosphere at the time for CZW like?
Well, you have to understand it was in the ECW arena.
Yeah.
ECW had just closed. Or when we ran, I want to say when CZW started running there, it may have still been running, but I don't know. So there was, imagine there's already a tent set up. There's already chairs out. You might as well have an event, right?
Yeah.
That was ECW arena. So CZW came into the ECW arena already with a fan base that we brought with us from New Jersey that was probably 350 people.
Yeah.
Roughly. Okay. And without social media in a place like South Jersey, that wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
But when we went across the bridge to Philly and started running the ECW arena, suddenly another 300-400 people from Philly that were ECW fans all showed up to try our product. And after they tried it once, they were like, oh yeah, we're sticking around. We had them. Boom. But the point is, ECW did do some of that heavy lifting for us. Of course, that's just the reality of running the same building as any other wrestling fed has ever run.
Yeah. So one of my favorite things about Johnny Kashmere, when I watched the SPOCast especially and saw the end of the year recap, whenever you gave an award, you stamped it with the T-Gimmick. Now, I'm curious, how did the idea for the T-Gimmick start?
Trent and I were studying Japanese women wrestling. And there was like a 4-way or some match where I don't even think it was a tag match. And the 2 women grabbed the other woman like we do for the T-Gimmick and lifted her up in the air and held her there and like walked around and started spinning. And I don't know what she did after that. But I remember me and Trent looking at each other like,
Yeah.
And that's what sparked it. And we're like, wait a minute, what if we don't hold the person up there? What if as soon as you hit the top, we're already going right down, forward, boom, boom, boom. And that's how it started. So it was inspired by Japanese women wrestling.
Wow. So another thing I'm curious about, you mentioned them earlier. When you wrestled them back then or even now, tell me about wrestling the SAT.
Some of the best matches ever, man.
Yeah.
Uh,
What
you know,
stands out about them?
well, SAT are an original band. They're not a cover band like the Backseats are today and were always. Okay. So when a tag team can wrestle another tag team that's also an innovator tag team, there's some magic that happens when you combine the two colors
Yeah.
that it becomes something beautiful and you start breaking new ground a little bit in tag team wrestling even. And that's what we were doing with the SATs. We were challenging ourselves
Mm-hmm.
to do more in the matches where we wrestled each other, us versus SAT or Briscoes, same thing. We trusted each other more. We knew we all had the same expertise.
Yeah.
So if we were wrestling the SAT or the Briscoes, it was like wrestling Blade and Mondo. It was, we trusted them. They could do anything they wanted to do. We could call anything, and we knew we weren't going to get hurt. We knew we were going to be safe. So I would say the best thing about working the SAT was the innovation. They say metal sharpens metal, stone sharpens stone.
Yeah. Another thing that I'm really curious about, I remember seeing the post on social media, and you even said on the podcast you were excited for. So on December 16th, 2023, it was I think it was at the time, was it the Nü Backseatz against the Vaudevillians?
Yeah,
Tell me about that one. Is that the first interaction you had with Simon Gotch?
yeah,
Because then after that, he comes on the podcast, and then does
yeah,
he does SPO wrestling too, right now?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He wrestled Rick Blade at our last event. Him and
Yeah.
Rick Blade are wrestling the rep at our next event,
Yep.
February 8th. Yeah, Gotch, I remember being a little apprehensive, like, oh,
Wow.
this guy's he's gonna grab me and suplex me in the ring and land me on my head and treat me like a rag doll. I'm like, he's not gonna respect me. And he shows up and I introduce myself to him, like, hi, I'm Johnny Kashmere. It's nice to meet you. And he's like, dude, I know who you are. And he couldn't have been cooler, more humble, down to earth. He actually watched old CZW stuff. Yeah, so that's actually how we met, was him and him and his partner Aiden English. Man, what consummate pros. I've the first time they debuted on NXT, I marked out huge for their entrance, for their whole thing, and I started watching it. And
Yeah.
then when they came up to the main roster, I was a big fan. So to get to know him and meet him and see him and stuff, like, a tag team that I revere so much, it was really wonderful.
Yeah. So we mentioned it, the SPOCast. You've been doing it every single week. The days change, but was that your always idea? Did you want to do a weekly podcast to talk wrestling, promote stuff, and things like that?
I mean, I talked about doing it for years just because everyone has one.
Yeah.
You don't have to take any bumps in the ring to have a podcast. So I figured it's easy. And I like talking, so I figured why not? But no, it again, you're going the right way. Just coincidences happen and things line up perfectly. And you just, all the while, a great wind just carries you across the sky, my brother.
Yeah. How did you meet Phil?
Phil Stamper?
Yeah.
He was our main guy in Pro Wrestling Unplugged when me and Todd Gordon were running PW in Philly. Nate handled all the press. Nate helped us book. Nate did everything. I mean,
Yeah.
Nate was the backstage man.
So to go with that, you mentioned Pro Wrestling Unplugged. What do you think, if you could talk about the difference between Pro Wrestling Unplugged and SPO Wrestling?
Pro Wrestling Unplugged was more trying to provide Philly with what Philly likes.
Nice. Yeah.
SPO, Superpowers of Wrestling, is more about trying to develop talent and get fans along the way. So, I kind of thought of myself as still having a chance in PW. I could still wrestle in the WWE. I could still be on national TV. I don't have such delusions of grandeur for myself anymore. So now just developing talent is enough for me. And if SPO can be seen as a place that develops talent, any talent, one talent, two talents, it doesn't need to be dozens, then I think it's worthwhile and it's a good use of my time and energy.
Yeah. So we talked SPO Wrestling. The first ever main event was you against Homicide. Now, Homicide, I forgot if he announced it, but people have been announcing, I think this year he's starting to wrap it up or slow down his career. So what was it like having that first ever main event, packed house, wrestling Homicide?
That was awesome, man. It was awesome. He actually wrestled for the first ever PW heavyweight title and won it.
Wow.
So he beat Trent for the first ever PW heavyweight title. and he beat me for the first ever SPO heavyweight title. So it really meant a lot. And anytime I'm in the ring with someone like him, my God, it's just, he's so good.
And to talk about SPO Wrestling, when you first decided to come up with the idea, I think was it your birthday or something? You posted a video announcing the formation of SPO.
Yeah.
What were your like original goals for SPO Wrestling?
A place where the back seats could, a place where we could use the back seats the way I knew they should be used. Nice. And other talent, not just the back seats, but all of us. Like, you know, when you wrestle for other promoters and you're a promoter yourself and a wrestler, you think you know better.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh yeah, that was fun. But in the back of your mind, you're thinking, but if you'd had me do this, it would have been even more over and the crowd would have liked it even more, you know? So after a few of those, you start going, let me just run my own freaking thing.
Yeah.
Let me see. Because maybe I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm wrong. Let me try.
Yeah.
You know? And every wrestling promoter is a greedy action figure collector. Remember that. Okay?
Yeah.
And when you have a piece in your collection that I don't have, and I watch you play with that, and you're making it look so much fun over there, suddenly I'm looking around like, damn it, I need that figure.
Yeah.
Okay? That's FOMO, fear of missing out. That's one of the biggest weapons in independent pro wrestling today, I've noticed. Genius. And social media helps with it.
So let's talk about that. So you mentioned social media. One of the things I think that I became such a big fan of yours was how much you use social media to promote yourself, promote the Backseats, SPO Wrestling. So how much of an impact has that had? Because like you said, when you first started running at the ECW arena for CZW, you didn't have social media. So how much has that played into it?
I don't know yet. Jury's still out on that. It takes a long time to build a social media following.
Yeah.
You know? Like imagine let's say Prince Nana.
Mm-hmm.
He was plugging along, doing awesome forever. Okay. And he probably had 10 or 12,000 followers on Instagram.
Yeah.
As soon as he debuted doing his dance, he's probably got millions of followers now. And he's selling tons of t-shirts and stuff. So part of me almost thinks it's not even worth it the old-fashioned way to build a following on social media and one person at a time. It's almost not even worth it, bro.
Yeah.
It's almost just wait until you, like, look what happened with Nick Gage when he wrestled Jericho.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you love to have seen his Instagram that next morning?
Yeah.
That's how you go viral, in my opinion, and not by putting out good content anymore.
Yeah, I forgot who it was. I think it was sometime last year. Donnie beat me like a prediction. Was a Queen from AEW he predicted was going to be a star, and like that had like 80, 100,000 views?
Yeah, Queen Aminata or whatever.
Yeah.
He called it, and then like 2 days later, we see that she signed exactly as he said. Yeah, that's neat.
So another thing that I'm curious about, because I know you had a hand in it, walk me through how you get Rick Blade to come out of retirement. Because I remember that show. I remember watching on YouTube. You first just announced him to the ring, and is it that show he's wrestling later on?
Yeah, it was supposed to be me and Zandig.
That's right, yeah.
And Zandig didn't make it, but he sent Rick Blade.
Yeah.
So we had no choice. And he was just like, yeah, I'll do the best I can, man. And he went out there and killed it. And it was complete chance, bro. Again, what I'm talking about with the coincidences and stuff. All of the best laid plans of mice and men, that's not usually what comes to fruition, what blossoms and gives you the most fruit. It's usually something you didn't even expect or plan, and it just fell in your lap.
Was it hard to convince him?
What?
Was it hard to convince him to come back to actually wrestle?
No.
Really? Wow.
No, it was hard to convince his wife.
That's right,
I had to sit next to her and be like, yo, and she just looked at me like, fine.
Yeah.
She's awesome. She used to manage him, and she was a wrestler, so she gets it, you know.
Are you going to bring her out of retirement too?
Never say never, brother. Yeah. Never say never. I don't know that I'm that charming. We'll see.
Yeah. So since coming back, you have become, like I said, people call me a mark for you. But when you first came back, what would you say were like your original goals? Like, I know you came back, you said you had a liking into the back at the time, the Graysons, but did you have any goals for pro wrestling at the time?
No.
Yeah.
No, not for me in the ring. I was just thought I would cut promos. I'd be the guy on the microphone. And these are the Backseat Boyz, the best team in the world. Like, I thought I'd be that guy.
Yeah.
You know? And then one of them hit me up and said, yo, why don't you come up and train at the school so we can go over manager spots? And I'm thinking to myself, me, Trent, and Donnie never went to any school to go over manager spots.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't seem, but I went. I was like, well, this must be how the kids do it today, is what I was thinking. So I went up there and started training, and before you know it, I'm tug in.
Yeah. One of my favorite things part of the Backseat Boys was that first promo you guys did. I think it was the first one. You guys were riding. You went to go visit Trent, but you said something that caught my eye. I forgot the word. You said when you have something, you have an obligation to do it. I forgot those exact words.
Yes.
So even in this interview, like some of the quotes you say are blowing my mind. It's like, where did you come up with a lot of this?
A lot of it I make up, and I studied old Hindu traditions, old Taoism traditions. I mean, even like my tattoos are from the Tao Te Ching, which is like the oldest book ever written. I'm very into Eastern philosophy and things like that. And, like I think what you're talking about is what I said is if you have the ability to change the situation, you also now have the responsibility to change that situation. Because what if no one else sees that a situation needs to be changed in the first place?
Yeah. Well, Johnny, I want to thank you for doing this. However, I've ended every interview the same. So obviously, I hope it's not anytime soon, but the day Johnny Kashmere decides it's over and it's time to hang up the boots, what do you want your legacy in pro wrestling to be?
I helped people while I was in it.
Yeah.
That's all I need, bro.
Yeah.
I'm happy at the end of the day. When I got to look my maker in the eye, I want him to say, all right, kid, come on by.
Yeah. Well, Johnny, I want to thank you for doing this, and I want to thank you for everything, man, over these years. Like I said, I wanted you to be episode 2, and I think this is about to be like episode 38 when it drops. So, man, thank you for everything. And thank you for the podcast, man, because every week I'm watching it, I see the consistency. That's one of the biggest things I'm trying with mine. And, man, thank you for everything.
I would love to have you on, too. Soon. Dude, let's have you on soon and introduce you around to everyone, because everyone wants to meet you. We think the world of you, bro, and you're...
Thank you.
Listen, there's space under the backseat wing for you.
Thank you.
What you got to do is nestle.
I appreciate you, boys. Well, I think they know, like, even Ichiban said it. That match that you guys had, I keep telling Teddy Goods, like, we got to bring the Backseat Boys back.
I love Teddy Goods.
Yeah.
Dude, no, seriously. Like, I don't care if he ever uses me or the Backseats. I could care less. But I love him as a person and what he's done, and I'm a mark for him. He's what I want to be.
So let me ask you, because you're somebody who retired and came back. He hates this, but on every episode, I pretty much ask my guests. In pro wrestling, retiring doesn't really mean anything. If you had a guess, do you think he ever comes back? His claim is if his son, whenever he grows up, wants to see him wrestle, he might put on the gear one more time. But do you think he does?
Teddy?
Yeah.
No comment.
Yeah, I already said 2 years, the night of his retirement. I said 6 months, pal.
Bro, when you love something so much, you become... it becomes out of your control, and it's going to get to the point where enough steam's going to build up that Mount St. Helens is going to erupt at least one more time in Teddy Goods' life. You heard it here first.
Yeah. Well, Johnny, I want to thank you very much for doing this, and thank you, everybody, for watching this episode. This was Best for Business.